What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Josh Talks. Joining me this week, he is former Cruiserweight champion. He's wrestled for pretty much every promotion you can name. He is TJP. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's good getting a chance to catch up with you. You and I, we go way back. You know, we go back in the day of working various independent wrestling promotions in California, back when people would actually book me as a referee. So interesting times back then. That is for sure. Hey, I want to ask you, because while I was getting ready to do this little interview with you, I was looking up some past interviews that you've done, and there was something that really caught my attention. It sounded like in the time frame where you and I will work together at various companies, you said that you were living out of your car at some points. I had no idea about any of this while you were working for everybody. I was wondering, like, do you mind kind of going into a little bit of how that came to be?
So in 2008, I had done a lot of work for WWE, coming in and doing different dark matches and tryout matches and stuff like that. And I think just the way that the schedule was allotted, it just kind of worked in my favor. I don't think that they were really like had their eye on me necessarily, or especially in comparison to anybody else. But their schedule swung around the West Coast like twice in a really short amount of time. So I ended up doing there was like 6 different shows for them in just a couple months, or like a few months, something like that. So like the guys there were seeing me a lot. And when I was there, it was just like, because the frequency, they then started to kind of take a look at me because they were seeing me so often. And I would be in the ring wrestling with like a Jamie Noble or like Tyson Kidd or something like that, guys that I've like been friends with for a long time. And then the company would kind of see me like put in this work like for like 20-30 minutes straight, just rolling and wrestling before the shows. And so they invited me back for some more stuff. And eventually I was pulled aside, and I think it was Tommy Dreamer was the one that pulled me aside, and he was saying that like the frequency maybe at a certain point wasn't working in my favor, and just that maybe I should try another medium as far as like like entertaining the idea of joining the company. So he recommended I go down to Florida, because the FCW at the time was the developmental camp before NXT. And so I the way I've always been, it's like the reason for all these on my arm here is
I'm going to get to all the tattoos shortly, because that's very different from when I last saw you.
Yeah, this arm is all landmarks of my life and career, and it's just all the places I've lived and gone, because I mean I've never had to been told twice to go out and get what I'm looking for. I never expected it to come to me. So he said go to Tampa. I went to Tampa. So 2009, I went to Tampa, and I walked on at FCW in the camp. I walked on as if I had never wrestled before, because they have a camp for signees, and they also have a camp for unsigned talent. So I walked on as if I had never wrestled before, and just like I was signing up for wrestling school, because I didn't want them to think like, oh, this guy like coming from New Japan or TNA or the Indies or Ring of Honor, like Mexico, all this stuff. Like I didn't want them thinking that all these places had what at the time was like a negative view maybe of the way that those wrestlers are brought up. Now they're a lot more broad in thinking. It's like a total 180. But at the time, that those things could be strikes against you. So I didn't want them thinking that. So it was kind of hard. Like, you swallow a lot of pride. I was like a 10-year performer at that point. I'd had a full career, but I just acted like that never existed. Went and spent time in camp, and it was not the right. Ironically, it was not the right time for cruiserweights. And they said that there would never really be a place at that point for a guy like me there, because they already had their Evan Bourne in place. They already had their Tyson Kidd. They already had their, Low Key at the time coming into the system. So they said, we have, the 2 or 3 guys that could fill this role, and that's all we need. And so there was no opportunity there. But in the time that I had been gone, I mean, everything, the way wrestling is, man, and especially with me, like I've been doing it so long, it crosses over generations. So it's like leaving New Japan and Ring of Honor, TNA, Mexico, all this stuff behind. I mean, now the Kevin Steens and El Genericos and Young Bucks and Kenny Omegas and Ricochets and Johnny Gargano, all these guys are now coming up. Adam Cole, Tommaso Ciampa, and now they're killing it. And these spots are not available. You can't just leave it on the table, So that was a gamble that I did. I bet the farm that I could do this, and I failed, completely failed. And, Murphy's Law, right? Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So, I was out there, 23 years old, been wrestling for 10 years, never held a single job, don't have an education. The recession hit. So I'm walking into Baskin Robbins and Shell stations asking for graveyard shifts or whatever, just anything. Janitor at high school is like, please just give me a job so I don't have to be out on the street, because wrestling, I had no wrestling to do. Nothing. Nobody had a spot for me. So, but I couldn't get a job and couldn't keep wrestling, and got evicted. That was that. So, I was out there with a loved one at the time too. So, we were 3,000 miles from home and homeless, and kind of, we spent a few nights in the laundromat, spent a few nights in the car, collected coins outside Walmarts at night to just try and buy tuna and macaroni or bread or something in the morning or whenever. I would do these little bar shows they would have in Newport Richey and Tampa, and on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, stuff like that, and billiard halls or bars, dive bars in front of 8 people. And I could make $10, $15 and just enough to eat for a couple of days, dollar menu food. And, we would find a place for rent and, get kicked out of there and then find another place. And, not that was the way of the world for us for most of that year, just basically couch surfing or living in the car. And then eventually we got set up with a little townhouse with a wrestling promoter had space available. And we were able to find a place that was kind of steady to have a roof over our heads. And then, little by little, I was able to build my career back. I started going to Evolve, then Dragon Gate USA, then back over to Japan for Inoki, and then back over for New Japan, and back to Mexico, then on to Lucha Libre USA for a couple seasons. And then that got me to Ring of Honor, and then Ring of Honor to TNA, and TNA to WWE eventually. Ironically, to lead the Cruiserweight revolution full of guys like me that they didn't need a few years back. But yeah, I mean, for a couple of years, it was pretty rough. I think a lot of people think when they hear that story, because if they don't know me, they think oh, this is the typical story of an up and coming guy that is trying to get through wrestling school and living out of his trunk. No,
it's not.
I was blessed, man. I was Kobe Bryant from high school right to New Japan and right to all this stuff. And I had already been wrestling in high school, and I was making great money. And it was I don't know, it was more like a Rocky Balboa story. I mean, it's I got to hear, or James Braddock, I got to hear, and it just, the rug got yanked out from under me, and I had to rebuild everything. So it was a totally different type of challenge, I think, than people realize.
Dude, when is this movie about your life coming out? Because that alone, just the story of had it, lost it, living in a car, building your way. I mean, that's a freaking movie in itself, just right there.
I mean, I don't know. You don't really think about it at the time, and looking back and just knowing how it was and how normal it felt, it doesn't seem like this Cinderella story. It was definitely a horror story at times, and a lot of loved ones and stuff went through a lot at the time, and people who we were not very happy. So it wasn't the most beautiful of stories, but I think if anything, if you really want something and you stick to it, and I believe in God's plan, and for those that don't believe in that, you believe in the universe's plan or whatever, there was a reason why I wasn't able to get a real job, and he kept me wrestling. I used to beg, man. I used to be I don't want to try and wrestle anymore. I hate these stupid shows. If I was any good at this, or you wanted me to use these gifts or something, you would have me using them. Instead, I'm wrestling in bars. Let me just get this job at Stater Brothers or Albertsons grocery stores or something, and let me just survive instead of halfway starving. And at the time, I didn't realize why that was what I was left to do. I just felt like it's like my own personal purgatory. But I think in the end, it's because there was, a lesson to be learned. I needed to grow up. I didn't really know what a career was, and I wasn't very responsible. I needed to learn how to take care of other people. I needed to learn how to take care of myself, and just kind of become a man. So that's really, I think, what it came down to.
And that led to you, like you were saying, kind of leading the revolution of the cruiserweight in WWE with the Cruiserweight Classic. Now, clear this up for me, because I've heard various stories, various rumors. I have no idea what might be real, might be not. Maybe you don't. Who knows? But so obviously you went on to end up winning the tournament, winning the Cruiserweight Championship. And then I heard different things of, oh no, it was supposed to be Zack Sabre Jr., but he wouldn't sign. Or it was supposed to be Kota Ibushi, but he didn't sign. So you know what? TJ will sign, so we're gonna push him. How far in advance of the tournament did you know, or did you have any idea that they're gonna let you be putting you over and having you win the tournament?
Well, to those points. For one, I wasn't under contract until Clash of the Champions after I had already won it. So I had turned down my initial deal too. So I wasn't
interesting.
I wasn't like this backup plan that they're like, oh, this guy will sign. So I actually I remember Zach and Kota and I, everybody, all 32 of us fielded offers all on the same night, because I remember they put us all in the classroom at Full Sail. They had theater style classroom, right? And they would call us down. There were like 4 stations with different WWE representatives, or people that are producers or part of the office that were there, and then they would call us down like 4 at a time, like at different ones individually, to kind of field offers or whatever. We all got offers at the same time, and Zach and Kota were like, wait and see. I just flat out told them no. I wanted to go to Lucha Libre USA and go back to Japan and do something, because I had been in not Lucha, I wanted to do Lucha Underground, sorry. So from like Lucha Libre USA, then to Ring of Honor, then to TNA, like that was like, God, like almost 7 or 5, 6 years of my life that I didn't have any freedom. Like I was just under contract. And I was like, I kind of missed Japan and missed Mexico and missed I wanted to kind of do my own thing for a while. And like, towards the end of TNA, I was like kind of burnt out and stressed out a little bit, and like just wasn't having fun. So I kind of wanted to just have some peace of mind, have fun. So I told him no. So I was a less safe bet than Zach or Kota. But the other thing too, I mean, there's a lot of things for that. Like I also knew that they wanted me to go through from like almost before it started. After the first round, I remember they pulled me aside at, I don't know, a WWE event somewhere where they had us backstage, and they asked me who I wanted to wrestle in the finals. So I knew I was going all the way through as of then, because then they asked, do you want Zach or do you want Grand Metallic? And originally I picked Zach because that was the match Zach and I are good friends, and I like that style. So I thought that would be a lot of fun to do. And they said, okay, but then they ended up wanting to do me and Metallic, because I think stylistically we would offer like a more diverse match than me. Like me and Zach might be a little bit boring for a lot of people, because stylistically that's not for everybody.
They're just hoping in the finals, just not like a technical masterpiece per se.
Yeah. Like if Zach and I are trading arm bars and hammerlocks, and we only every now and then kick each other in the face or something, like it won't be as diverse as, going from Zach and Metallic, which will probably be a better match than that, to me and Zach, after me and Kota will have been probably a better match than that. Then we end up doing this like body scissor fest, and it's like nobody, I don't think that would be for everybody. But so I knew like way back that they were gonna kind of push me all the way through. And after every round, like it was weird. Like the whole process, they really babied me. Like I never had that before, especially with that company. You come in, usually it's like you're kind of treated like a new enlisted soldier, like in the army, and they yell at you and tell you, go here, go there, do this, do that, shut up, mind your business, blah blah blah. You can't do anything right when you come in to do dark matches or tryouts or extras or something like that. And I just remember everything you could do wrong. Not everything you could do wrong, but like I was not like, I didn't have that experience coming in. Like if I was late for a meeting, they would apologize to me. They'd be like, "Oh, sorry. And we're glad you can make it." They would usher me into this like other room and be like, "Here,
Wow.
we'll catch you up on what all the other people were hearing right now, just so you know," and blah, 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 blah. And we're going to get promo pictures and these interviews to like set up this pre-tournament, And I was like, dude, like you guys are like babying me hardcore. Like that's very different for me. And after every single match, I would come back, even from round one with Mac and like after Johnny, after everything, I would come back and it's like Hunter and Sean and Regal and Norman Smiley, Terry Taylor. They were all waiting behind the curtain as a group for me. And, just to kind of like, I don't know, like boost my confidence, tell me everything that I was doing right, offer me advice if there was something that I could do better. But like, they were like very like hands-on with me. Like they were all like wrestling dads for me throughout this whole thing. So I remember thinking that's different too, because not everybody was getting that. I would sit and watch all the matches. People were coming back by themselves, do their little interview and go. And like, they weren't babying everybody. So when they asked me who I won the finals, I kind of knew like from like the first or second, whenever it was that they said that I knew I was going all the way through. And also too, like just after being in the company for a while for like several years, and it was like, I understood that sometimes they set up stuff like having a guy like a Zach and a Coda on opposite sides of something like that. Like in the Rumble, they might put two people like that, or in King of the Ring or something like that. They might do something like that because they know fans will fantasy book that.
Sure.
And they don't have to do it. They just know that fans, they'll hook that demographic of fans just by doing that. So they'll watch it no matter what. So I don't know that was ever the plan for them to go all the way through. I just know that they do a lot of that stuff on purpose because they know that that's all the advertising they need to get that demographic. And then you're in. They don't have to actually put any of those guys in the finals.
So when you're talking about, I mean, you struck me with something in there. What you're talking about is how like they were like really being super positive with you and kind of baiting you with something you obviously weren't used to. When did that, do you feel, kind of stopped on your way? Because, obviously you're getting pushed to the moon as a Cruiserweight champion and everything. And then eventually when you drop the title, then it just kind of almost floundering for a while.
So that was still like that. Like, I guess people have to understand, like, the title is, I mean, it's just like a piece of gear. Like,
sure.
It's a part of your costume. Like, after the title went to, so it can work in positive ways, but like removing it from somebody isn't a negative strike, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So like it can be used as a promotion, but it can't be taken away as a demotion necessarily, because they feel like once you've had one, you're like a world champion forever. Like that's like in the NBA, if you get a ring, you've won a title. Like you're a Hall of Famer. Like that's kind of how they view it. So like even after like it was passed on to Brian, like people would still call me champ and they would still view me as like top of the card guy for the cruiserweights. And like, even if they didn't always have me at the top of the card, sometimes I remember they would put me in matches like a 4-way match or a 5-way match. And I would even ask them like, why I feel like I have no steam with what we've been doing recently. Why me? Why don't you use somebody else? And they would say, well, we felt like this match needs star power and you're a top card guy. You're a former champion. So like, I was like, that changed my perspective of how they view using that, I guess, prop. You know what I mean? Sure. So they kind of still treated me that way until, I don't know, probably after like Neville left and it really started to change. And then, it just became apparent that like other guys were at the top and the show had kind of flip-flopped in different people's hands. So the people that kind of were that way with me in the beginning, that wasn't the infrastructure really taking care of the show anymore. So it was like, like they just kind of like picked their own guys as if it was a new project. And I just wasn't one of those guys.
Do you think 205 Live would feel more successful if it was filmed at Full Sail as opposed to being filmed after SmackDown? I mean, it's obviously a bigger crowd, but the crowd is tired because they've just gone through a few-hour show.
Sort of. It depends. I don't know. I really think the problem was segregation, to be honest. I think that's really what it comes down to. Because like people had wondered if changing the schedule would help. But there were times where we filmed before Raw or before SmackDown. And I remember doing 205 before a Raw in Philly, a wrestling town on a wrestling night, and we're the ones opening the show, and it was crickets. They didn't care. So it didn't matter. Didn't matter we go on first or last. They didn't care. Because they were already programmed to not care, because we're held separately. So they're like, we don't have to care about these guys, you know? And then I remember doing like at Full Sail, like you would think so, but like the segregation hurts at Full Sail too. And in a lot of ways it hurts even more because Full Sail is more of a diehard crowd. So I think it's the diehard crowd that sort of brings down the casual crowd at like bigger events like a SmackDown or a Raw. And then that's how it becomes so silent or like how you get CM Punk chants or something like that. Because it's the diehard crowd that know that they're programmed to not care about us. So then they lead the other fans in not caring. But then at a place like Full Sail, it's only diehard fans. So they're really going to be like, yeah, Johnny and Tommaso, yeah, you know, Bianca and so and yeah. This was Cruiserweights. Let's go buy some T-shirts. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're even there, they would know that. Because I mean, it literally, like, it was so hard for any of us to even get reactions at NXT shows. Like when some of the Cruiserweights would make guest spots at like NXT, it was even hard there. So I just think like typically the way that it would work for a guy, somebody like say Elias, if Elias was coming up out of NXT or an FCW or something like that, like if an FCW guy back in the day or whatever is coming up, they come up by themselves and they are inserted into a role where they're, you know, in a promo opposite Jericho, and they kind of strike a nerve, and then they start a feud. Then they get into it with them. They go toe to toe, and then in the end, more often than not, they pick up a win on this guy, or they lose, but they've already gone toe to toe with this guy for 4 weeks, and the spotlight was all on them. So that's immediate like equity that's transferred from a guy that they're rubbing elbows with that matters. So they're going in there with somebody that matters. Whereas with us, it was the complete opposite. It wasn't just one guy with a spotlight to themselves. It was 10 guys with a spotlight we had to share, and we didn't have anybody of importance to share it with. So it's kind of hard in that way. And I think for that reason is why I think it was better in the beginning when the title moved around a lot. I'm not usually a big believer in the title has to stay put on one guy for a long time in order for it to mean something. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Like, it can be meaningless that way, but there are times when that can make it really exciting. And I think in this case, because there's no anchor and there's no well-established person, it has to keep moving, because then, you know, you start building everybody can beat everybody. So everybody feels important. It feels unpredictable. You know, I like to compare it to like Monday Night Raw in like 1993 or 94, when it was like a 1 hour show basically. And there's like only about like 10 guys. So it's a lot like a 205, you know, you'd only have like 2-3 matches and then some promos. Not everybody was on every week. It's very similar. But at that time you could anchor the show behind like a Bret Hart and have him hold the title, because it doesn't hurt Shawn to lose. It doesn't hurt Lex Luger to lose, or Diesel or Razor, because they've already been established. But like with us, it's 10 unestablished guys. So I think because we weren't allowed to be on Raw mixing in with like Roman and whoever, like Andrade or No Way Jose or just anything, I think until it got to that point where they had like Lucha House Party was really the first people to break through and be like mixing in. I think until then, it was like there was such segregation that you were just automatically programmed. Like, this is the pre-show. Who cares, you know?
And then you, earlier you were, you know, referencing your tattoos on your trip on where you've been. So there are the rumors and the stories again. See, when you can set a record straight that you've talked in the past. You asked ahead of time to get tattoos.
Yeah.
You got them, and then the rumors of, oh, you've been released because of these tattoos.
Right.
How much of that could be remotely true?
Zero. None of it.
That's what I thought.
It's not even logical, to be honest, because I think, like, one, it stems from people really wanting my separation from them to be like this, like a behavioral thing, because like that comes from people that really don't like me, you know? And that's fine. I don't mind if people don't like me, but it's not like, I don't think it has nothing to do with me like having like problems or anything like that. And tattoos, I think, was just like a scapegoat for them looking for a reason for why like I would have which, to be honest, it would be kind of cool to get fired over tattoos if that were the case. I think that's a pretty rock and roll thing to get fired for, you know, like I think that's pretty awesome. I in fact, I kind of wish that were the case. The reality was I spent a year asking to do different stuff, and mostly I wanted to get back to representing Filipino Americans and Asian Americans, like how I was in the Cruiserweight Classic. And I felt like that was what my value was to the company. If you notice from the time I got on Raw and onward, because I was passed from one team to another, the second team that got me didn't really understand what it was that we were doing in the tournament. So it's like
you were like a video game guy, even though that's Xavier Woods' gimmick. You had all like the 8-bit music.
Right. So they kind of asked me what I wanted to do, and I was like, well, if I have to create an aesthetic, I wanted to create Scott Pilgrim, Ready Player One, that sort of thing. So I said, let's do that, because that's a significant part of like my life as a person, and it's also something that's appealing. And as much as like Woods is into video games and stuff like that, that's not something that they necessarily exude as characters like New Day, you know, like now they've gotten into a little bit more recently, but like not totally. And I felt like this is something that I would like to do. And there's not too many guys that kind of have that aesthetic. Like Kenny Omega has it, you know, There's not a lot of guys. So I felt like, and especially our generation, like that came up on like Nintendo and came up on Back to the Future and stuff like that. Like there's this whole like retro like era for us, and for like mid to young, slightly older adults, that like there's nobody for us, you know, like it's either these Game of Thrones looking heavyweight dudes with beards and soaking wet ponytails, or like, you know, these young, like slender, flippy Spider-Man dudes. And there's like not a lot of diversity in between, especially in that company for a while. So it's like I wanted to kind of have that for guys in our wheelhouse. So I chose that because it felt like they didn't understand what I was representing coming out of the tournament. And I wanted to get back to that, because if you notice from like Raw on, I was just like a wrestler. And I would tell Vince, I'd knock on his, like I had a great relationship with him. I would meet in his office anytime I wanted, ask him for advice or pitch an idea. I asked him to use my initials as TJP. Like that was something I pitched, and he said, great, yeah, we could do that. Same as like HBK or Y2J, stuff like that. I pitched to Valet at one point. When they were turning me heel, me and Summer Rae, we pitched it together. We wanted to do like a Sean and Sherry type of thing. But that one they didn't want. They sat on it for a little bit, but they didn't want to do it. And maybe because they knew that Mike Bennett and like Maria were coming in, and they just didn't want to like mix the match too much. But they didn't bite on that one. But so, you know, I would pitch stuff. Some would get picked up, some would get not, some wouldn't. But, you know, I told him like I wanted to get back to that, and I felt like I was wasting his time, wasting his money. This was like 2018. So I spent a year kind of explaining to him, like, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, and I don't want to like waste your time. I don't want to waste your money. So like, can I do something better and be more valuable to you? I don't care where I go. You could send me to the UK. You could send me back to NXT. You could, you know, put me on SmackDown, do whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to do that. Be an ambassador in and out of the ring. You know, what Eddie was to like Latino fans, I wanted to be for Asian Americans. And I said, that's what worked coming in. That's what got the fan base that I have now, that you guys were pushing all these video game t-shirts to. They gave me like 6 shirts. I was the only cruiserweight with merchandise. So I was like, that success is based upon that, not because video games are like a cool topic. Like, so let me get back to that. And so he said, cool. And we tried to just pitch ideas back and forth. And I wrote for everybody, man. I wrote stories for me and Elias, me and Jinder, me and Finn, me and Bobby Lashley, me and Leo, me and whoever. Every person on every roster, I wrote a story for that I can, you know, what I thought I could do with them. And it's just, you know, none of them were a good fit in his eyes. So he didn't really know what to do. And after a while, it just got to be where, you know, he didn't want me to stay being unhappy. And he was like, I know you want to kind of spread your wings a little bit, but I don't know what would be a good fit to do this, like on what show. So I don't want you to just go back to the bench. And I guess that's sort of the risk when you raise your hand and stand up and volunteer to do more. They know, because he knows that they're wasting money on people that don't do anything. Like that's just reality. They have a cupboard full of guys, and they know there's tons of people they can cut. But he's not going to take the time throughout the week to be like, let's fire a whole bunch of people. Like he's just
Right.
going to be like, whatever, let's worry about Cena right now. Let's worry about Roman. Let's do the important stuff. But when you volunteer and you say, hey, you are wasting your time with me, now it's like you kind of stand out. So if it doesn't work out, you're kind of playing with fire a little bit. But I mean, I was happy to do it because I did want to go back to Japan. If I wasn't going to do this, I wanted to go back to New Japan. I wanted to go and do other stuff. So it was really just more about me being happy. So me leaving was like a year in advance, and I had nothing. It was way before I was getting tattoos or anything. And I had asked, for a long time. I met with the office, met with talent relations, met with everybody about how to start getting tattoos or whatever you're supposed to do. And I told them like, I wanted to do this when I was 23. That's the other thing too. It's not like it was like a midlife crisis thing. Like I wanted to do this ever since I was like 23 years old, but like, Lucha Libre USA is like a commercialized product. So like, please don't like make any major changes. Okay, no problem. Ring of Honor had just kind of switched over with Sinclair and wanted to start making toys and stuff like that. And they're like, well, let us know if you want to do something. Okay, I'm not going to go through the trouble. TNA was Suicide and Manic. And so they're like, don't make it so that we can't just put anybody in the suit or mask or if we want to change them. So, okay, I put that off too, especially once the sleeves came off. So then I was like, okay, now I can't put tattoos on there. And so it was like, after a couple of years in WWE, I remember telling Mark Carrano, I was like, dude, Mark, I am a grown ass man now. Like I want to be able to control my life and, I want to cut my hair how I want. I want to put tattoos on if I want. So he said, sure, just, let us know what you want to do. So I did. And then they said, okay, it's approved. They just want to make sure I'm not putting the F-bomb or something on my stomach.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I did. And yeah, I mean, like Vince would ask me like about my tattoos. They'd be like, oh, is that one new? Is this one new? And Michael Hayes would look at him like, oh, that's cool. Or this one, oh, that one looks like it might've hurt or whatever. Like, oh, what's this one mean? And stuff like that. So I think the other thing too, is like, cause if I wasn't wrestling every week, people would see me one week have nothing. And then the next week I have a full sleeve. Or I'm sorry, the next time they see me, I have a full sleeve.
Yeah.
But it's like every week in between when I'm off, I'm still at the arena. They still see me. So it's not like I show up and like hide myself until I'm on TV and I'm like, surprise. Like, they see me for 10 hours straight with tattoos on. And they if they were going to fire me, they weren't wait until after I've wrestled. Like they would just be like, go home. So.
And that kind of leads us to where we are now. You're on every week on Impact Wrestling right now. What is the difference in the atmosphere at Impact Wrestling now as opposed to your previous run as Suicide and Manic?
So, I mean, with management being different, it's very different. I mean, across the board because, they went through a major downswing in business, for one. So like now they've actually been on a pretty big upswing compared to like recent years. And the management is totally different. Ownership is totally different. I think for me, what struck me, and this is really why I kind of chose them as a destination, because like, I had a lot of options of what I would like to do. But I liked the amount of freedom that they were able to offer me. They offer everybody there a lot of freedom, which is really cool. And that's not something you can have anywhere else. And I think the roster is so like amazingly balanced. Like, I've never been in a place where everybody's all in one room like that. Even in TNA before, like this is a big difference is like, you had your Stings and your Kurt Angles and your Jeff Hardys and people. And then you had like your X Division room. And then you had like another room for other guys. And it's like, it was a great locker. It was always a great camaraderie there. It's never been a time when it wasn't. But people weren't always that close. Now, literally, it's one big room. Every single person is in that room. Everybody. Every heavyweight, every X Division wrestler, every tag wrestler, and then the knockouts obviously are all in their room, but like everybody gets along, and I think the way that the card is balanced, one night the knockouts will main event the show, the next night they'll open, and that goes for everybody. Like X Division can close one night, open the next night, tag division, heavyweights, like, and I've never seen that balance anywhere, not in WWE, not in New Japan, not in AAA, not in CMLL, not in Ring of Honor. Like that was a unique thing that I saw that I wanted to be a part of because it gives me a lot of creative freedom to kind of float. Like I know that in that place, I'm not going to be pigeonholed in a specific spot. It gives me a lot of freedom because everybody's kind of doing everything. And I don't have goals of like, I tweeted once about trying to be the Intercontinental Champion. But in reality, I tweeted that because I know what it means to Filipinos, not necessarily because I need to be a world champion or I need the Intercontinental Championship. I just wanted to do something for people that are watching me that I know who it would inspire. So to be in an atmosphere where I don't feel like I have to try and be like in line for a title creatively, or I can do whatever I want, you know. And I really wanted to go there and be in a tag team with Fala and get back to what I wanted to do in WWE and represent Filipinos and Asian Americans and stuff like that. I'm able to do that there. And, you know, every now and then they'll try to kind of force me to do these like banger YouTube type matches with guys, and I'm happy to do it. But that's not really what's important to me. It's important for me to just kind of have fun. So, and they give me freedom to do that.
And I find your tag team with Fala very, very unique. Because it almost has like a modern day feel of like a Heart Foundation, because you have the big powerhouse in Fala, and then you got the technical wizard in you, and it's unique seeing it, because then it's still much more modernized. Because Fala, I mean, he is doing things that Anvil wouldn't do. So there's still obviously the modern twist with it. So
yeah, I made him do the octopus hold the other day.
Yeah. Oh God. But yeah, so I find it interesting that, Impact is, kind of mixing and matching. And like you said, Joe, I mean, you have Tessa is the champion, at the time that obviously that's groundbreaking with everything. So it is really unique with all the stuff that they are doing there. So I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying yourself there. I do have just one final question. Just, this is like my clickbait type question that I'm just going to throw at you, just for fun. Have you ever thought, or has there been any recent talks about you trying to go to AEW?
So like obviously the guys there, a lot, like most of the people there are guys that I'm friends with.
Right.
So I talk to them all the time, not necessarily about like the company or anything. Just so it's obviously it has come up. Even members of their office infrastructure that are in charge of that we've spoken a little bit here and there. But when first we had talked, I hadn't left WWE and they were like, kind of kicking off. And I knew that if I were to leave, that might not be a destination timing wise, because they were already going to have their roster fleshed out and they need to stick with them for, a year or more. Like they need to really give them a chance. So it's one of those things where I've just kind of waited on and if it works, it works. I mean, that's really like a super like passionate fan type of product. And like, I've not always been the cup of tea for like diehard fans, I've never been like a darling, like for those types of fans. So, I don't know that I would be a great fit. I don't know that I wouldn't be, but I don't expect that I would. But for the most part, I've just been kind of keeping an eye on how they go, because they have a full team there. And most of those guys, this is their first like wrestling position at that level. So, they're all killing it. Nobody's dropping the ball. So it's, there's probably not going to be a spot for a guy like me for a little while.
Well, with that attitude,
I'm happy to see it though. Guy like Sammy Guevara and Orange Cassidy and, Darby, all these guys are amazing talent that people had not seen yet. And so the fact that they're out there and they're killing it like that, it's like, if that's the reason why there's no room for me, I'm happy, because those guys are awesome. But we'll see. Like they're still in their first year, and they still need to see how things play out, see how guys progress and grow. And it's just like a baseball team, Like I'm a center fielder, and they're 3 deep on center fielders right now. So it's like we'll see how it goes with what works out in the future. So.
Well, I mean, I can't wait to see obviously what the future holds for you. I've like we said at the beginning of this, you and I go way back. I've been, beyond happy for all the success that you've had, overcoming everything that you've shared in this today. I love what you're doing in Impact. I can't wait to see what goes on down from there. How can people who are watching this keep track of everything? Where can they tune in and watch you? How can they follow you if they're not following you already? Which, if you're not, shame on you. If you're watching, shame on you. But how can people reach out?
So you can pretty much find everything through my 2 socials on Twitter and Instagram. Both are at MegaTJP. I have a website that usually has my tour dates and schedule up, but for right now, the entire world is dealing with the T virus. So
yeah, about that little thing.
But yeah, the website where my schedule and stuff is usually posted is detonationkick.com. All my shirts and stuff from Detonation Kick, I had like a special Detonation Kick brand, but I merged that all together with my pro wrestling tees. So if you go to pro wrestling tees /TJP, you can find all that stuff and all my retro shirts and stuff there as well, if that's what you're looking for. And I mean, other than checking the schedule when, you know, we're back to normal and seeing if I'm in your town for like a local card or something like that, you can find me on Impact Wrestling cards, and also, you know, with New Japan Pro Wrestling. So anything that's New Japan USA, you can expect to see me. And, you know, any junior tours and stuff like that, for the most part, I should be in the mix. So you can see me between those two big brands, and you know, maybe some more MLW too. I had kind of come back with them recently.
Yeah.
So I mean, there'll be a lot of stuff like that on the horizon.
Very cool. Make sure you check out TJ. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Josh_Tariff. And please subscribe to this YouTube page, share this video. Anyone that you know is a TJ fan, anyone you know is just a wrestling fan, they should hear this story. Please share the video out, subscribe. There'll be more coming. TJ, thank you so much for hanging out, and we will see you guys later.
Thanks very much, Josh.